Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to our fifth PSI Performance podcast. Last week we launched our fourth one. If you haven't watched that one, please go back to that video, go watch it, leave a like, share it to whoever, and then please remember to subscribe. This week is our fifth PSI Performance podcast. I'm here with a work colleague of ours at PSI, Peter. He's a biokineticist at PSI. And today we're going to be talking about injury prevention, in developing performance longevity when it comes to sports, as well as for the general population or social athletes. And then we're just going to answer a few questions that we get a lot and look at certain misconceptions and tips that you need to implement in your periodization, your strength and conditioning plan, not just from a strength and conditioning perspective, but from a biokineticist perspective as well. Peter, thank you for being here with us.
Thanks for having me.
100%. We appreciate that you are here. I think we're just going to get into the questions. We're going to talk about it. And remember, if you have any questions, please leave the questions in the comment section or go onto our social media platforms and then ask the question there, because we might answer it in the next PSI Performance podcast or on our social media platforms. Okay, so Peter, the first question I have here is, what would you say is the most important aspect of injury prevention? What would you say?
So I think first it's good to clarify what population you're talking about.
Okay.
So if you're talking about general population, right? Somebody whose life doesn't depend on training.
Yes.
The reason they get injuries most often is a quote that's very applicable. It's they're doing too much too soon.
Okay.
After doing too little for too long.
That's interesting.
All right, so that can be anything. They could be popping into the gym, or they might be started running now after COVID or anything. But
Okay.
the point is their structures, their ligaments, their joints, their musculature is not at the point where they can take the load.
Okay.
For whatever sport is being applied at the moment. So then the tolerance is not there. Injury. It's
Okay.
quite plain and specific.
Yes.
So they need to really ease into training. I
Okay.
would say that's what you just mentioned, progression,
Yes.
periodization. Take it slow, work yourself up, start light, start easy, and adjust everything accordingly, go slow.
Okay.
Whereas if you're talking to an athletic population,
Yes.
it's usually the complete opposite.
Yeah, it is, yes.
So then I would say that they need to prioritize warm-ups,
Okay.
cool downs.
Okay.
You see a lot of guys that they just completely skip warm up, or they do a very crappy job
Yes.
at implementing a good structured warm up,
Okay.
which can save you years of troubles and niggles, just the proper warm up. And then I would also say that the athletes have a problem of holding back. I would
Okay.
say that you should plan proper progression and periodization with them, right? They feel good, they push. Sometimes they need to
Okay.
hold back a
Yes.
bit, right?
Yes.
So progression at the start of any cycle is fast.
Okay.
But once you've been doing it for a few years, your progress starts to
Yeah, it starts to plateau.
decelerate.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yes.
plateau, right.
Yeah, and you need to progressively then look at other things to.
Much more specific.
Yes. Okay.
To progress further. I would also advise then for athletes to look at something like a good coach
Okay.
to adapt your training appropriately.
Okay,
Sometimes,
100%, yeah.
sometimes you don't feel good today. You are underlying sickness, you're fatigue, some
Yeah.
other traumatic thing happened to you,
Okay.
you're not focused.
External
factors, your girlfriend broke up to you, your car got a flat wheel, you're not lucky in the
Yes.
head, you're not focused in the gym. Something as small as that can make the gate open for injury to pop in.
So now that you mentioned that, the idea I get is it's not per se a specific thing that you need to look at, but looking at the basics and perfecting the basics. For example, when you spoke about the social athletes, the recreational athletes, it's progressively increasing load in terms of intensity, volume, etc., but making sure that you're not doing it too quickly, too soon. Okay? That's just now to recap. And then when it comes to athletes, making sure that you've got a well thought out routine when it comes to training sessions, when it comes to athletic activity, when you're on the field, for example. So you've got game day, warming up, making sure that your body is oiled for the specific demand.
Right, yeah.
And that is one of the best ways to prevent injury. It's as simple as that.
Most definitely. I think that can be the easiest
Yes.
thing to apply.
Yes.
Obviously, there are a lot of different components which you can look at. Adaptation phases.
Yeah.
You can go and see a biokineticist, do an examination
Yes.
on your body, postural weaknesses,
Yeah.
what muscles are tight and weak,
The screening.
existing
Yeah.
stuff that might be there that can be corrected very easy. So
Yes.
there's a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
But I would say for the normal,
Yeah.
easier answer, I would say focus on a warm up, make sure you're primed for whatever exercise or activity you are going to do.
Yeah. And then the cool down, obviously, afterwards.
Super underrated.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah. That's something I've been wondering about, because a lot of times, I mean, we can now we've got questions here, but this is now an interesting question. I think, in my opinion, a lot of people, when it comes to athletes, they are aware of the importance of a warm-up and then the actual activity. But then what you sometimes see is after a match, I'm not talking for all coaches or all strength and conditioning specialists, I'm not talking about them, I'm talking about, in some cases, you get athletes that perform the activity and then they leave.
Yeah.
Or they perform, they have a game, let's say on a Saturday, for example, because you're in South Africa, a lot of the winter sports, can mostly occur on Saturdays. But then a lot of them cool down. But when does, for example, flushing happen? When do you get those toxins and all of those things out of your body to get new oxygen and blood flowing to those muscles that worked? And because that sets you up for the next week. And that also prevents injury, because then your body is already primed and ready for the next activity, the next exercise.
Yeah. So I think obviously this training breaks down the body, right? It's not where we get stronger.
Yeah, exactly.
Where we break ourselves down.
Exactly.
And then in recovery is where the body recovers and builds itself up, right? To be stronger in the next session, right? So if you're just training and you're walking out and you're going along, and the thing is, the most horrible thing happens after training usually.
Okay.
Even after the gym, you sit in the car and you drive somewhere, or you go to your office and you sit for prolonged hours.
So there's no movement then involved, blood circulation.
Yes. So your body is most warm and pliable when you're warm after training.
Yes.
That's the most, let's say, window of opportunity where you have to actually make foundational or long-term changes to your body.
Okay.
And now you go and sit with your pliable body in a chair.
Yes.
And it gets called in
that state.
That position.
Position rather. Yes.
Which is terrible for shortened hamstrings.
Hip flexors.
Hip flexors are shortened.
Rounded posture, chest.
Boom. Okay. So that is the most window of opportunity where you have to make postural changes. Long-term changes. I would say, obviously, and it's the prime window for you to get into a recovery phase, or to push your body into recovery. That's also neglected for not doing a cool down.
So what you then you place emphasis on the cool down, but the reason for it being that's the most optimal state for your body to recover,
to get into recovery, right? That's diaphragmatic breathing. Boom! It puts you immediately put you in a parasympathetic state.
Yes. Where
oxygen is upregulated. You're talking about flushing. That's another technique you can use. Stretching, static stretching. Perfect time to do that, right? Foam rolling. It's also a way of getting the toxins out of the body.
And the blood flowing again to the muscles, loosening it up.
So super neglected.
Yes. Which is highly recommended.
Very much so.
Very much.
By the leading experts in strength and conditioning around the world. So you'll see it starting to get traction, but obviously it's a boring part of training.
It is. I must say, I agree with you on that, because it's so simple, and if you do it correctly, you're supposed to feel something. But a lot of times I think a lot of people do it and they don't understand why they do it. And that is problematic, because I think if you realize the importance and the benefits of a cool down, for example, you will start implementing it more.
Yes.
And taking a little bit more time to, adhere to a specific cool down program. That's an interesting point. And I hope now the audience that's listening take note of what we just said and why it's important, and I hope you start implementing that as well. The second question, we spoke briefly here in the facility, we spoke about it, is stability. Now, when I think of stability, and I want to hear your opinion based on what I'm going to ask now, when I think of stability, I think of joint integrity, and I think of isometric strength. So for those that don't know, isometric strength is holding a contraction without any movement. Okay, it can be eccentric or concentric. Okay, but there's no movement involved, so it's static. Okay, but there's still a muscle contracting to exert force on a specific thing. Okay, so why would you say stability and isometric strength is currently overlooked?
Alright, so stability, right? The base of the word comes from stable.
Yes.
Something being stable. You said a joint. I would say it's the base of everything that you are. Let's take the stupid example of a car.
Okay.
Right? Let's say it has enormous amounts of torque, horsepower.
Okay. Yes.
But the wheels are Mari biscuit wheels.
Yes.
They crappy wheels.
Yeah, shaky.
Shaky.
Yeah.
They
Okay.
have thin base.
Yes.
The torque that the car possesses will not be able to propel the car as fast and as possible as it could if the car would have had proper wheels.
That's an interesting explanation. That's
Right.
okay.
Let's take another example, more practical, something simple as a bench press, right?
Okay.
So you're pushing with your push muscles, the chest and the triceps and the shoulders and whatnot, but it's the antagonistic muscles, the back, the rotator cuffs, that is your base that you're pushing off.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So your push strength will be inhibited by the ability of your antagonistic muscles to put the joint in a stable position so that it can exert all the force that it potentially has.
Okay.
So stability training, yes, very, very important. What's the core of the question?
So the core is, so when it comes to that is, why is it overlooked? Okay, why do you say it's so important? Now you're starting to explain it. And when it comes to isometric strength, maybe just explain, for example, how do you incorporate isometric strength? Because a lot of people, I've seen them do isometric strength, but they only do it in one range.
Yeah. Okay.
So they're going to be stable in one range, but you neglect the other ranges as well. So that's what I want to hear.
Okay, interesting. So stability. So if I look at a person and they come in with pain or whatever, right? One of the first things I look at is joint integrity. Is there stability?
That's the first thing you look at.
One of the first things I look at, right? So let's say you have back pain in whatever movement or activity you are doing. I go and look at all the muscles that are in compound working together to create stability in the region. And usually there is one or two that are not doing its part of the job. They're unstable.
Yes.
And then that can maybe usually be the cause of the pain. So neurologically, what's happening? If the brain perceives a certain structure, we said in our lower back, let's keep it there, to be unstable, it will inherently go and try and protect the lower back, and by doing that it decreases the range of motion in the area. It can be different structures, but it decreases range of motion, so making you stiff. So it's a protective mechanism to protect the area if it is unstable. Now usually what happens when you go in and let's say it's psoas, and it's unstable, you test it, it's unstable. If you go and with rehab movement based stuff you correct it, meaning you upregulate it, it's more involved now, it's more stable, without ever stretching, without ever doing anything fancy, you would see that patient have massive increases of range of motion
Okay.
in that area, because now the brain perceives the area as safe and it allows free range of motion around the whatever spine or whatever
Hips,
joint we're talking about.
for example.
Yeah. Massive increases in range of motion because the brain feels safe. It is stable. There is tensegrity. There is everything is working together.
And that is that you achieve, or that can be a result because of stability, developing stability in that specific joint or muscle.
Specific muscle,
Yes.
anything else.
Without even stretching.
100%.
So that increases the mobility as well, and that's what. So that's why you place emphasis on stability and isometric strength and.
So, and a lot of people they simplify it too much. Like stability has a lot to do with neurological, muscular connections. It's not just a muscle on its own. So let's say you had a good example just now.
What are you talking about? Which one?
Let's use the knee joint as an example, right? Some people perceive stability as strength.
Yeah.
If you are strong, you are stable.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
I have a bit of a play in that.
Okay, yes,
right?
I want to speak about that actually.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes.
Because you can put this oak on a leg press and you can push out torque, right? He's a strong
He's got
oak.
force.
He's got force, right?
Yeah.
It's there. But individually go and isolate a muscle and test it. The chances are there might be a few weak links, right? So what people mostly neglect, or therapists more specifically, is they forget the motor pattern, neuromuscular timing.
Yes.
Right?
Okay.
If a muscle is strong but slow to fire in a specific situation, it is unstable.
Yeah. I agree 100%. But that can carry over. For example, I spoke to Mo about speed, agility, and quickness, and we also touched base on stability. Okay, so you're moving at certain speeds, velocities that are so fast. You don't only develop stability in an isometric state. I'm now placing emphasis on that's where you start, for example. Okay, but then you need to be able to enhance that stability and have it when you are at maximum velocity, when you need to change direction as quickly as possible. And sometimes that's what we also talked about. Quickness is having that stability once you need it, as fast as possible. So that's an interesting correlation we can make when it comes to speed, agility, and quickness, and the strength that we are talking about now. Is you don't have it because you can generate strength, but are you
on time?
Exactly. Is it as quickly as possible? Is the integrity of the specific joint or muscle intact? Is it where it needs to be or should be in a healthy sense for you to generate that specific work? That's a very interesting aspect, and I think the thing is we don't have that amount of time, so much time. We can talk about this for a while and touch base on everything, but obviously we don't want to give everything away because we are still, we've got our own IP and stuff that we do here. I think that's an interesting questions to be asked and answered. Like I said, there's so many things that we can still talk about, but I just wanted to talk about that and touch base on that. If you, the audience, are interested in other questions, please, we're going to have Peter's social media account in the description. If you've got any questions or you want to consult him, please do so. You can contact him there. And then if you've got any other questions, please leave it in the comment section or send us the question on our social media platforms. And Peter, I just want to thank you. Yes.
One more thing.
Okay. So we're not done yet. We're not done yet.
Me and you bounced quickly in the beginning about acute injuries and what does rehab have to do? What's the place in rehab with that? I'm not going to say a lot.
Okay.
The only thing is, with a quote, rest is not rehab. Okay. I'm just going to leave that there.
If you want to know why, please ask. And then me and Peter will, when we've got enough questions, we will sit down again, and then we can discuss on that, and then we'll make it a series rather for our podcast. But thank you for sitting down, and I hope you enjoyed this podcast, Peter. Once again, thank you for this now, and then we will see you in the next PSI Performance podcast. It's going to be an interesting one. Hoping to get Pierre back on the seat to talk to him about other stuff. So please leave a like, share this video, subscribe if you haven't, and then we'll see you in the next one. Cheers.